My mother told me to withdraw from Harvard so my gambling-addicted sister could start over. No discussion. Just an ultimatum, your degree or your family. Said no. She erased me. Let me paint you a picture. You're 19 years old, sitting in your Harvard dorm room, the place you clawed your way into against every odd, when your phone rings. It's your mom. You expect the usual. How are classes? Are you eating enough? Don't forget to call your grandmother. Normal stuff. Instead, she opens with, "You're going to withdraw from Harvard this semester." Not, "Can we talk about something?" Not, "I have a difficult situation." Just a flat declaration. A decision she'd already made. For you. About your life. Your future. Your one shot at breaking the cycle. Actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because my brain couldn't process what I was hearing. I'd spent my entire childhood being the low-maintenance kid. Good grades, no drama, scholarship so she wouldn't worry. My sister Brooke. She was the crisis magnet. The wild child. The one who needed constant rescuing. And now, suddenly, I was the problem that needed fixing. My mom's reasoning. Brooke had failed out of community college and needed a chance to reset. Apparently, that reset required my college fund, my future, and my enrollment status as collateral. Because according to her logic, and I'm quoting directly here, Harvard will still be there next year. Your sister doesn't have anything. Let me translate that for you. Your sister screwed up her own opportunities, so now you need to sacrifice yours to make her feel better about it. That's not parenting. That's hostage negotiation with guilt as the weapon. Here's what makes this even more twisted. My mom framed this whole thing like we were trading shifts at a part-time job. "You can go back next year," she said, with the casual confidence of someone who has never navigated financial aid, conditional scholarships, or the labyrinth of academic bureaucracy that could swallow you whole if you step away for even one semester. She didn't know, or didn't care, that my scholarship had conditions. That my financial aid depended on continuous full-time enrollment. That, just taking a year off for someone in my position wasn't a gap year adventure. It was a potential dead end with no return ticket. I need you to understand what was at stake here. Harvard wasn't just a school to me. It was the first thing in my entire life that was mine. Not something I had to share with Brooke. Not something my mom could redistribute when family finances got tight. It was the one door I'd opened through my own work, my own brain, my own relentless refusal to accept that kids from my zip code don't get to dream that big. And she was asking me to close it. Not even asking, telling me to close it. Like it was just another family expense we could defer until things got easier. Like my education was a luxury subscription we could pause when the budget got tight. I stared at her pixelated face on my laptop screen, that little green light blinking on my webcam, and I realized something that made my stomach drop. She really meant it. This wasn't one of those guilt trip speeches you grow up with in tight families. This wasn't her venting frustration. This was an ultimatum. Pick your degree or pick your family. I said one word. No. Not dramatically. Not with some prepared speech. Not with tears or shouting. Just, simple, clear, final. I thought that would be the beginning of a long, messy fight. The kind of argument that stretches over weeks, with guilt trips and compromises and eventually some kind of uneasy resolution where we all agree to pretend everything's fine. I was wrong. That was the last normal conversation we ever had. What I didn't know in that moment, what I couldn't have predicted, was that saying no to my mother's ultimatum would get me systematically erased from my own family. That years later, when she was in a hospital waiting room asking me to help save her life, that single word would echo in both our heads like an accusation that never faded. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. First, you need to understand how we got here. Because this didn't start with that phone call. It started way before. In a house where love and obligation were so tangled together that you couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. Before that call, before withdraw from Harvard became a phrase I couldn't hear without flinching, my life was split between two very different versions of home. There was the actual house in Los Angeles, a rented one-story place in a neighborhood where you could hear other people's arguments through thin walls on hot nights. And there was the idea of home my mom kept selling to herself and everybody else. Loud, close, loyal. The kind of family that always sticks together, even when sticking together mostly meant pretending things were fine. Maeva, 19 at the time of that call. First in my family to make it to a school anyone outside our zip code has heard of. And the only reason I ever even thought about Harvard was because a teacher in 11th grade circled a grade on my test and said, "You know, kids from here can go to places like that too, right?" That one sentence changed my life. It opened a door I didn't know existed. My mom Karen loved telling people I was the smart one in the family, but it was more like she was bragging about a scratch-off lottery ticket she'd bought that turned out to be a winner. There was pride, sure, but it was the kind of pride that comes with ownership. Like my success was somehow proof of her good parenting, not my own work. My sister Brooke was different. She was older, louder, the kind of person who could walk into a room full of strangers and walk out with 3 new best friends and a free drink. For a long time, my mom called her my wild child with this half-exasperated, half-proud tone. Like chaos was just Brooke's quirky personality trait, not a pattern that would eventually detonate in all our faces. Brooke tried college once. Community college. Classes that started late in the morning so she didn't have to give up her nights. She dropped out after a year and a half with a few credits, a lot of stories, and this deep burning embarrassment that came out sideways as jokes. After that, she bounced between jobs. Server at a sports bar, front desk at a gym, some influencer's assistant for about 3 chaotic weeks. And somewhere in there, when money was short and tips were bad, she found online gambling. At first, it blended in with everything else she did on her phone. A notification here, a flashy app icon there. I thought it was just another game. She'd shove the screen in my face at the kitchen table. "Look," she'd say, grinning. "I just won $50 while you were doing calculus." There were bright animations, confetti, fake coins raining down on her screen like she'd hit some digital jackpot. What she didn't show me were the losses in between. The mounting debt. The desperate late-night sessions trying to win back what she'd already lost. The classic gambler's spiral. I only started to realize how serious it was when little things in the house changed. The rainy day jar my mom kept on top of the fridge, the one that was supposed to be untouchable emergency money, was suddenly empty. The power bill sat unopened on the counter longer than usual, like ignoring it would make it go away. I caught Brooke snapping at my mom when she asked about gas money, using this sharp, desperate tone I hadn't heard from her before. My mom worked as a manager at a mid-range clothing store in a strip mall off the freeway. It was the kind of job that required her to smile more than she wanted to, stand longer than her feet could handle, and come home with just enough energy to eat, watch half an episode of something, and fall asleep in front of the TV. She talked about money in the way people talk about the weather, constantly, but like it was something happening to her, not something she had any say in. "I'm just trying to keep us afloat," she'd say, stirring a pot of pasta with one hand while checking her phone with the other. "Once Brooke's on her feet, once you graduate, things will get easier." Always future tense. Always conditional on someone else fixing themselves first. There was a college fund once. Not a huge one, just a chunk of savings my mom had started when I was a kid. She liked to mention it in front of other parents, how she was putting a little away every month. Even if it kills me. When I got into Harvard, that account suddenly became less theoretical. The financial aid office did more than I'd expected, but there were still gaps. Plane tickets, books, basic living costs that add up faster than you can imagine when you're living in one of the most expensive cities in the country. My mom filled some of those gaps from that fund, and she made a point of reminding me. "That money could have gone toward a new car, you know," she'd say, half joking. "Or a vacation I'll never take." But she'd also tuck $50 bills into my hand when she dropped me at the airport, saying, "Get yourself something that isn't noodles once in a while." The night before I left for Cambridge, she threw a small get-together. Family, a few neighbors, some of Brooke's friends who treated it like an excuse to drink by the pool. There was a string of paper lanterns sagging over the backyard, a tray of Costco appetizers, a Bluetooth speaker doing its best against the sound of traffic from the freeway. People hugged me, told me to stay humble, to remember where you came from. My mom got misty-eyed when someone asked her how she felt. "Proud," she said, squeezing my shoulder. "Lucky." Brooke, already a drink and a half in, just laughed and added, "We'll see if she still remembers us when she's all Ivy League and married to some guy named Chad." It was a joke, but there was an edge to it. A sharpness that cut through the laughter. That edge got sharper once I actually got to Harvard. What happens when the good kid finally says no? Let me show you exactly how my family made me pay for choosing myself over their chaos. Here's something nobody tells you about being the smart one in a struggling family. You're not actually valued for your intelligence. You're valued for your usefulness. You're the lottery ticket, the investment, the retirement plan, the one who's supposed to pay dividends later, compensating for every sacrifice made along the way. My sister Brooke was the golden child in every way that mattered emotionally. She was loud, charismatic, magnetic, the kind of person who could walk into a room full of strangers and leave with 3 new best friends and someone offering her a job she wasn't even qualified for. My mom called her my wild child with this half-exasperated, half-proud tone. Like chaos was just Brooke's quirky personality trait, not a ticking time bomb that would eventually blow up in all our faces. Me. I was praised, sure. But it was the kind of praise you give a reliable appliance. Ava's so responsible. Ava never gives me trouble. Ava just handles things. I wasn't celebrated for who I was. I was appreciated for how little maintenance I required. For how I never added to the already overwhelming pile of problems my mom was juggling. The pattern was set early, probably before I was even conscious of it. Brooke would create a crisis, flunk a class, lose a job, blow her entire paycheck on something stupid, and my mom would swoop in to fix it, bail her out, make excuses, smooth things over. Meanwhile, I'd be quietly acing my tests, applying for scholarships, staying out of trouble, doing everything right. And you know what my reward was? More responsibility, higher expectations. The implicit message that because I could handle things, I should handle everyone else's things too. My competence became my burden. Let me give you a concrete example of how this played out. There was a college fund, not huge but real. Money my mom had saved specifically for my education. She mentioned it constantly, especially in front of other parents at school events or family gatherings. "I'm putting a little away every month, even if it kills me," she'd say with this martyred pride. It was proof she was a good mother, a responsible mother, someone who planned ahead. Then I got into Harvard and that fund became flexible. Suddenly, it wasn't your college money. It became that cushion we have. Then what's left in that account? The boundaries dissolved like they'd never existed in the first place. What was mine became ours. And ours meant it could be redirected whenever the family, which really meant Brooke, needed bailing out. The shift was so gradual I almost didn't notice it happening. A withdrawal here for an emergency car repair for Brooke. Another one there because the bar where she worked had cut her hours and she couldn't make rent. Each time my mom would frame it as temporary. Just this once. Just until she gets back on her feet. We'll put it back before you need it. But it never went back. The fund just kept shrinking like water through a crack in a bucket. While I was at Harvard trying to keep my head above water academically and financially, Brooke was spiraling. She'd bounced between jobs. Server at a sports bar where the manager eventually fired her for showing up late too many times. Front desk at a gym that closed down under mysterious circumstances. Some influencer's assistant position that lasted exactly 3 chaotic weeks before they mutually decided to part ways. Somewhere in there, between the job hopping and the mounting frustration, she discovered online gambling. And let me tell you, those apps are designed by people who understand human psychology way too well. They're predatory. They target people who are already struggling, already desperate, already looking for that one big win that'll make everything okay. First, it looked harmless. Just another app on her phone. Flashy graphics, exciting sounds, the promise of easy money. "Look," she'd say, shoving her phone in my face at the kitchen table during one of my brief visits home. "I just won $50 while you were doing calculus. Who's the smart one now?" There were bright animations, confetti exploding across the screen, fake coins raining down like she'd hit some kind of jackpot. It looked fun, exciting, harmless. What she didn't show me were the losses in between. The hundreds of dollars disappearing into these apps. The desperate late-night sessions where she'd convince herself she could win back what she'd lost. The classic gambler's fallacy playing out in real time on her phone screen. I only started to realize how serious it was when little things in the house changed during my winter break visit. The rainy day jar my mom kept on top of the fridge, the one that was supposed to be sacred, untouchable emergency money, was suddenly empty. When I asked about it, my mom got defensive. "Things came up," she said vaguely. "You know how it is." The power bill sat unopened on the counter longer than usual. Not because my mom forgot about it, but because she was avoiding it, hoping somehow it would be less than she knew it would be. I caught Brooke snapping at my mom one evening when she asked about contributing to gas money. It wasn't just annoyance. It was this sharp, desperate tone I hadn't heard from her before. The tone of someone who's in over their head and doesn't know how to admit it. My mom worked as a manager at a mid-range clothing store in a strip mall off the freeway. It was soul-crushing work, the kind of job that requires you to smile more than you want to, stand longer than your feet can handle, deal with entitled customers who treat you like you're less than human, and come home with just enough energy to eat something quick, watch half an episode of whatever's on TV, and fall asleep on the couch. She talked about money in the way people talk about the weather, constantly, obsessively, but like it was something happening to her, not something she had any control over. Like she was a passive victim of circumstances rather than someone making choices every single day. "I'm just trying to keep us afloat," she'd say, stirring a pot of pasta with one hand while checking her phone for some sale notification with the other. "Once Brooke's on her feet, once you graduate, things will get easier." There it was again. That future conditional thinking. The fantasy that someday, somehow, if everyone else just got their act together, everything would magically improve. She never looked at her own choices, her own patterns, her own role in keeping us all stuck in this cycle. When my health app, a small, clunky tool I'd built for a class project, won a campus competition and came with a modest grant and a boosted financial aid package, I called my mom as soon as I left the auditorium. I was excited. Proud. This was a big deal for me. I could hear the store sounds in the background when she answered. Beeping scanners, hangers scraping against metal rods, muffled pop music playing over the speakers. "They're giving you more money?" she asked over the noise. "Like actual money?" "Some of it goes straight to tuition," I explained. "Some is a stipend. And they want to connect me with an alum who works in healthcare tech. It's a big deal, Mom. This could open doors." She let out this long breath. Half relief, half calculation. I could practically hear the wheels turning in her head. "That's great, baby," she said. "Really great. Every dollar helps. Maybe now I can stop robbing Peter to pay Paul." She laughed, but it wasn't really a joke. I thought that was the end of it. Just my mom being my mom, turning everything into a financial stress conversation. I didn't realize that conversation planted a seed in her head. The idea that my education wasn't just my future. It was also a resource. Something that could be moved around on a mental spreadsheet labeled family survival. While I was in Cambridge worrying about passing algorithms and whether I could afford to buy new shoes before winter really hit, my mom was back in Ella listening to Brooke talk about One Last Shot. The bar where Brooke worked had changed owners, and she hated the new manager. Said he was killing the vibe, alienating the regulars, running the place into the ground. She and a couple of bartenders started talking about how they could run the place better in their sleep. "We just need capital," Brooke told my mom, according to what I'd pieced together later. "We know the crowd. We know what sells. We're doing all the work anyway. Why not do it for ourselves?" My mom had always wanted something of her own. She'd joke about it when she came home with sore feet, kicking off her shoes in the doorway with a groan. "If I ever get out of retail," she'd say, "I'm opening a place where I make the rules for once. Where I'm the boss and nobody can tell me to smile more or stand straighter or deal with one more return from some lady who wore the dress to a wedding and now wants her money back." So when Brooke started talking about taking over a small spot near Sunset, painting this picture of a family business where they'd finally be in control of their own destiny, my mom didn't see risk. She didn't see Brooke's track record of unfinished projects and impulsive decisions. She saw an exit ramp. A way to stop clocking in for other people. A chance to build something that might actually be theirs. By the time she called me with her plan, she wasn't improvising. She had numbers printed out. Half-understood projections that didn't account for reality. She had a story she'd told herself enough times that it almost sounded reasonable. She had convinced herself this wasn't a desperate gamble. It was a smart family investment. I didn't know any of that during that first conversation in my dorm. All I knew was she was suddenly talking about my enrollment like it was a flexible subscription service, something we could pause and resume whenever life got tight. The ultimatum came later, after I pushed back. After I reminded her, probably with more sharpness than she expected, that my scholarship had conditions, that my financial aid depended on me staying full-time, that just take a year off wasn't neutral advice for someone in my position. It was potentially life-altering. Still, even with all the tension building under the surface, I didn't think she'd actually follow through. I thought she'd cool down, complain to her friends about her ungrateful daughter, maybe guilt-trip me in group texts for a while, then eventually let it drop. I underestimated how scared she was, and how much of that fear she'd already transferred onto me without ever saying it out loud. When you grow up in a house where money is always almost enough but never quite, desperation doesn't arrive with sirens. It shows up disguised as practical decisions. And those decisions were about to destroy everything. After I said no to withdrawing from Harvard, I expected a fight. What I got was something much colder, much more calculated. Strategic abandonment. Didn't happen all at once. That's the thing about emotional exile that people don't understand. It's not one dramatic moment where someone screams, "You're dead to me," and slams a door. It's death by 1,000 paper cuts. A slow erasure that happens so gradually you almost don't notice until you're already gone. First, my mom stopped calling me back as often. When she did answer, conversations became transactional. Clip. Efficient. How are classes? Fine. Good. Stay warm. Love you. Blick. No more long rambling conversations about nothing. No more her venting about difficult customers or asking my opinion on whether she should cut her hair. Just the bare minimum required to technically maintain contact. Then came Thanksgiving. The first real test. I tried to book a flight home, sitting hunched over my laptop in the dorm common room, comparing prices and trying to find something that didn't completely drain my checking account. Even the cheapest option was a stretch. Nearly $300 I really couldn't afford to spend. But it was Thanksgiving. It was family. I thought we'd figure it out like we always had. I called my mom, expecting the usual conversation. The one where she'd complain about how ridiculous flight prices were, make some comment about how airlines were highway robbery, then sigh and say, "Don't worry, I'll cover half. We'll make it work." Instead, when I told her the amount, she let out this short, sharp, annoyed laugh. The kind of laugh that has no humor in it at all. "Ava, I can't do that right now," she said flatly. "Do you know how much I'm juggling over here?" I hesitated, confused by the sudden hostility. "I thought we were setting aside money for travel." "You said." "Yeah, well, that was before the rent went up and the car needed repairs and your sister's hours got cut," she snapped. "I'm doing the best I can. If you want to come home, figure it out. You're the genius, remember." The word genius didn't sound like a compliment. Sounded like an accusation. Like somehow my intelligence was an unfair advantage I was wielding against her. Like being good at school was a character flaw rather than the result of years of hard work. I did the math in my head while she kept talking, her voice getting sharper with each sentence. If I bought that ticket, I'd be down to almost nothing. No cushion for textbooks next semester. No buffer for emergencies. No safety net at all. Just me walking a tightrope without any protection. "Maybe I'll stay here this year," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. Lots of people don't go home for Thanksgiving. The dining hall is doing a dinner. It could be fine. There was a pause on the line. A small silence that felt heavier than all the shouting from our previous fight. "Wow," she said finally, her voice dripping with sarcasm and hurt. "First semester at Harvard and you're already too good for Thanksgiving with your family. That's not what I said, I protested, feeling panic rising in my chest. I just don't want to put us in a worse spot financially. Flights are expensive, Mom. And you literally just said you can't help. I said I'm tired, she shot back. I said I'm doing my best. But you hear what you want to hear. It's been 3 months and already you talk like you're visiting from another planet. Like we're some embarrassing relatives you have to deal with instead of the people who sacrificed everything so you could be there. I swallowed hard, feeling tears prick at my eyes. I'm trying to be practical. You're trying to make excuses, she said coldly. Fine. Stay there. Enjoy your fancy sad little campus dinner with all the other people whose families don't want them. Just remember who held everything together so you could be there in the first place. Remember who went without so you could have. The line went dead. She'd hung up. We didn't say, I love you. We didn't say goodbye. I sat there in the common room holding my phone, staring at the ended call screen, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. Around me, other students were chatting, laughing, making their own holiday plans. Nobody noticed the girl in the corner whose family had just imploded over a $300 plane ticket. Thanksgiving came and went. My roommate went home to Connecticut. Her parents had sent her a care package the week before. Homemade cookies, a new scarf, a card signed by her whole family. The campus got quiet in that eerie way big buildings do when there aren't enough people in them. Empty hallways, closed dining halls, the echo of your own footsteps following you everywhere. I ate turkey that tasted like it had been cooked by committee. Dry, bland, institutional. I sat at a long table with a handful of other students who were stuck there too. International students who couldn't afford to fly home. Kids from the West Coast for whom the travel was prohibitively expensive. A few people who, like me, just weren't speaking to their families right now. We laughed at a movie someone had downloaded. We pretended we were fine. We didn't talk about the empty chairs at tables back home with our names on them. After that, the tone of our conversations never went back to what it had been. They got shorter, more transactional. My mom would ask about grades, but not about what I was learning or whether I liked my classes. She'd ask if I'd found any side gigs or work opportunities, followed by half-jokes about how we could use a successful startup founder in the family. Every mention of money came with a small twist. A reminder that my education was not just mine in her mind. It was a family investment that would need to pay returns. Brooke's messages went from snarky to oddly quiet. Every once in a while she'd send a picture from whatever bar she was working at that week. A blurry crowd, a neon sign, a tray of shots, with a caption like, "Another night, send caffeine," or "If you want to switch lives for a week, I'm ready." Sometimes at 2 in the morning her time, I'd wake up to long voice notes. The kind you can tell were recorded after a few drinks. Sometimes she was nostalgic. Remember when we used to sneak cereal at midnight and watch trash TV? When did everything get so complicated? Sometimes she was resentful. Must be nice to have people handing you money to study while the rest of us actually work for a living. And once, just once, she sounded small, vulnerable, scared. I thought I'd be further along by now, she said, her voice shaking slightly. I thought I'd have my shit together by 25. Don't tell Mom I said that. I didn't tell her. It was the closest Brooke ever got to admitting things weren't working. That the life she'd been living wasn't sustainable. That she was drowning and didn't know how to ask for the right kind of help. A few weeks later, I woke up to an email from the bank. Low balance alert. I frowned, still half asleep, and rolled over to open the app on my phone. The shared savings account my mom had opened years ago. The one that still had a few $1,000s in it last time I checked, money that was supposed to be my emergency fund, was down to almost nothing. Not zero, but close enough that my stomach dropped and my hands started shaking. There were several withdrawals listed over the past month, each one chipping away at what little security I had left. Rent, utilities, a payment to a place I didn't recognize. Then another withdrawal that definitely matched the name of a vendor that bars use for supplies. I stared at the numbers on my screen until they started to blur. Then I called my mom. This time she picked up on the first ring. Her voice bright and fake cheerful. "Hey, Did you see the new pictures I sent from the store? We got this horrible shipment of neon sweaters. I swear someone in corporate hates me. Did you empty the savings account? Cut in, my voice flat. There was a pause. Not long, but long enough for me to know she'd been expecting this call. I used what we needed, she said carefully. What do you mean we? I asked, feeling anger rising in my chest. That money was for school. You said that was for school. School is paid for, she shot back defensively. You told me that yourself. Scholarships, grants, whatever. Meanwhile, rent is due now. Groceries are due now. Your sister had a slow month. I got fewer hours because they're cutting shifts. Life doesn't wait for you to finish your degree, Ava. You could have told me, I said, hearing my voice go thin and strained. You could have asked. Asked what? She snapped. Asked if it was okay to keep a roof over our heads. You'd have said yes and then gone to your little budgeting spreadsheet and had a panic attack anyway. I spared you that. You didn't spare me anything, I said, my voice rising. You just made the decision for me. Again. Oh my God, not everything is about your autonomy, she said, stumbling over the word like it was foreign. Sometimes adults have to make hard choices. I didn't blow it on purses and vacations. I used it to keep this family from sinking. By using the only safety net I had, I replied. By using the thing that was supposed to make sure I didn't have to drop out if something went wrong. Nothing's gone wrong, she insisted, her voice getting louder. We're just stretched thin. You're acting like I stole from a stranger. It's my account too. Put that money there. I can move it if I need to. Legally, she was right. The account was in both our names. Emotionally, though, it felt like standing in front of an open door and watching someone pack up your stuff without asking. So where does it stop? I asked quietly. If I get another grant, is that for the family too? If I pick up more shifts, is that just more proof I can handle losing support? When do my accomplishments become mine instead of just more resources for you to redistribute? You're twisting this, she snapped. You always do this when you're scared. You act like I'm the villain. I'm trying to make this work for all of us. You're up there at the nicest school in the country because I didn't give up when things got hard. You think I had anyone to lean on when I was 19. I think you're so used to surviving that you don't notice when you're stepping on me to do it, I said. There was a long silence. I could hear traffic through her car window, the faint beep of a checkout scanner somewhere in the background. When she spoke again, her voice was flat. Me. If you're going to talk to me like I'm some kind of thief, she said slowly, maybe we need to take a break from these conversations. You can focus on your big important life up there. We'll figure ours out down here. I never said you were a thief, I protested weakly. I said I felt blindsided. Same difference, she said. You made your choice, Ava. You stayed there. You picked that over us. So don't call me from your dorm room and act shocked that the rest of us are making choices too. That was the last real conversation we had. After that, my calls went to voicemail more often than not. When she did pick up, it was surface level. Weather. Work. You sound busy. I won't keep you. The family group chat kept going, but I stopped getting notifications from it. One day I opened my messages and realized I hadn't seen anything in weeks. When I scrolled back to find it, it was just gone. I didn't need to ask what happened. Someone had removed me. Maybe my mom. Maybe Brooke. Maybe both of them together. United in the decision that I was no longer part of the family unit. My number still technically worked, but the line between us had gone quiet in a way that felt more permanent than any dramatic hang-up. I didn't find out she'd also locked me out of my old room until much later. A neighbor mentioned in passing that they'd helped my mom move boxes into your space, and asked when I was coming home to see the changes. I smiled and lied and said, soon. Probably winter break. Even though I already knew that whatever home used to mean had clicked shut behind me like a door with no handle on the outside. It wasn't cinematic. There was no single slammed door, no shouted "You're dead to me," no dramatic music swelling in the background. Just a series of small, practical decisions that added up to one truth. If I wanted to stay in school, I was completely on my own. So I did what I had to do. I leaned into the only thing I still had control over. Building something that belonged entirely to me. When there's no one left to catch you, you get very good at building your own safety net. Or you fall. Those are the only two options. I refused to fall. I picked up an extra shift at the library. Then another. Pretty soon I was working almost 20 hours a week on top of my full course load. The money wasn't great, barely above minimum wage, but it was mine. Money that nobody could take from me. Money that didn't come with conditions or expectations or the implicit debt of family obligation. I started taking small freelance projects through the campus job board and online platforms. Nothing glamorous or well-paid. A clunky scheduling tool for a local clinic that needed to coordinate patient appointments. A script to clean up messy patient survey data for a grad student who was drowning in Excel spreadsheets and couldn't make sense of it. Documentation work for a small health tech startup that couldn't afford to hire a real technical writer. Every dollar felt like another brick in the wall between me and the chaos I'd left behind. Every completed project was proof that I could do this. That I didn't need my family's approval or support or involvement to survive. And I kept tweaking the little health app I'd built for class. Not because I thought it would change the world or make me rich or solve healthcare's problems. I kept working on it because it was mine. My code. My logic. My vision. Something no one could take from me, claim credit for, or say they'd helped build when they'd actually just tried to tear me down. The loneliness was brutal. I'm not going to romanticize this part or pretend it was some empowering journey of self-discovery. There were nights when the silence in my dorm room felt so heavy I could barely breathe. Nights when I'd open social media and see pictures of my high school friends with their families, their parents commenting heart emojis and proud messages, and I'd feel this hollow ache in my chest that no amount of academic success could fill. I'd hover over my mom's name in my contacts, my thumb shaking over the call button. I'd picture her at the kitchen table back home, rubbing her temples with one hand, phone face down beside a stack of bills she didn't know how to pay. I'd think about calling and saying, "Let's start over. Sorry. Let's just forget everything and go back to how it was." Then I'd remember the empty savings account, the plane ticket she wouldn't help me buy, the way she'd said, "You made your choice," like I'd abandoned her for fun instead of refusing to drown alongside her. Like choosing to stay in school was some kind of betrayal instead of basic self-preservation. Every time I'd lock my phone, put it face down on my desk, and go back to my laptop instead. Back to code. Back to work. Back to building something that couldn't be taken away. My roommate noticed. "You okay?" she asked one night, watching me work through yet another dinner. "You're here like constantly. When was the last time you went out? Had fun?" "I'm fine," I lied. "Just busy. Lots of projects." She didn't push, but I saw the concern in her eyes. The way she'd leave little snacks on my desk. The way she'd invite me to things even though I always said no. I wasn't fine. But I was surviving. And survival was all I had the energy for. Winter break came. Everyone went home to their families. To warm houses and home-cooked meals and parents who asked about their classes and actually cared about the answers. I stayed in Boston. Found a sublease in a dingy apartment with 3 other students who also had nowhere else to go. Picked up extra shifts. Worked through Christmas. My mom didn't reach out. Neither did Brooke. The silence felt like confirmation of what I'd already known. I'd made my choice and they'd made theirs. Spring semester was better. I'd adjusted to the loneliness by then. Learned to fill the empty spaces with work and ambition instead of grief. My health app started getting noticed. A professor connected me with a public health lab that was interested in testing it. A small pilot program at a community clinic. Nothing huge but real. Tangible. Then, without warning, my mom solved the question of whether we'd ever reconcile by deciding to visit me instead. She didn't tell me she was flying out. Didn't ask if it was okay if I had time if I wanted to see her. She just texted one morning. "Are you on campus?" 20 minutes later, she was standing outside the science building, squinting up at the stone architecture like she was trying to decide if it impressed her or just made her feel small. She looked more tired than the last time I'd seen her. A little thinner. There were faint gray strands at her temples I didn't remember. Her clothes looked worn, not dirty, but the kind of worn that comes from washing the same 5 outfits over and over because you can't afford new ones. But when she hugged me, it was the same tight, familiar grip that used to make me feel like nothing bad could happen as long as she had a hand on my back. For exactly 2 seconds, I forgot we were in the middle of something. For 2 seconds, I was just a kid being hugged by her mom. Then reality crashed back in. We walked to a coffee shop just off campus because she refused to let me pay the absurd cafeteria prices. "I didn't fly all the way here to drink $8 coffee," she said, rolling her eyes in that old familiar way. "I want somewhere normal." We sat at a small table by the window. She watched students hurry past in hoodies and headphones, her eyes tracking the university logos on their sweatshirts. "Does everyone here walk that fast?" she asked. "Feels like they're all late for something." "That's kind of the vibe," I said, trying to smile. "Constantly 10 minutes behind." She smiled a little at that, but it faded when our drinks arrived, and there was nothing left between us but steam and silence and everything we hadn't said in months. "So," she said finally, stirring sugar into her cup without looking at me, "I've been thinking a lot since we last talked." My stomach tightened. I knew where this was going. I could feel it coming like a storm you can smell in the air before the rain starts. "About the savings?" I asked carefully. "About everything," she said. "About Brooke. About you. About this." She gestured vaguely at the building behind us, the campus, my whole life. I probably didn't say things right on the phone. I was stressed. I was scared. That was as close to an apology as she was willing to get. And part of me, the part that was still a kid who wanted her mom's approval, wanted to grab onto it and hold tight. "I just need you to hear me out," she continued. "Before you decide I'm some monster." There it was. The word she thought I was using for her. "Okay," I said quietly. "I'm listening." She took a breath. The kind people take before they jump into cold water. "Your sister is not built like you," she started. "You've been carrying yourself since you were what, 12? 13. You got yourself into this place. You figured out scholarships, jobs, everything. You land on your feet. Brooke doesn't. When she screws up, she hits concrete. Hard. That's not my responsibility," I said, more gently than I felt. "I know," my mom replied, surprising me. "On paper it's not. But in real life it is all of ours. She's family. When one of us sinks, we all get pulled under. That's just how it works." She told me about the last few months in LA. How the landlord had threatened eviction. Not once, but twice. How the power company had started sending pink shutoff notices. How Brooke's bar situation had turned into something more tenuous and weird, with new owners cutting hours and asking employees to invest in promotional events that never seemed to materialize. "She got in deeper with those apps," my mom said quietly, looking down at her coffee. "The gambling ones. I didn't realize how bad it was. I saw her playing around on her phone, but I don't know what I thought. That she'd grow out of it, maybe. Like it was just a phase." She said phase in this small, ashamed voice, like she knew it sounded ridiculous. Like she was admitting to a failure she couldn't quite name. "She started borrowing," my mom went on. "First it was from me, obviously. Then from friends. Then from people you don't want to owe money to. People who charge interest that compounds daily. People who make threats when you can't pay. When I found out how much she owed, I almost threw up. Ava, she was in deep. And the thing is," she continued, her voice getting desperate, "she's not evil. She's not sitting there thinking, how do I ruin everyone's life today? She's just stuck. And scared. And really, really bad at being scared. So you decided to fix it," I said. "Like you always do." "What do you want me to say?" she snapped, then immediately rubbed her forehead like she regretted the outburst. "Yes, I decided to fix it. I found a way that didn't involve her ending up God knows where with people we don't want her anywhere near." She pulled out papers from her bag, spread them on the table between us. Lease agreements, debt schedules, business proposals. There's a guy who wants to sell his place, she explained. Small bar over near Hollywood. Good location. Loyal regulars. He's getting divorced, wants out fast. He's willing to sell cheap if we take over the lease and some of his debt. It's a mess, but it's workable. Mom, I said slowly. Owning a bar is not a rehab plan for a gambling addict. It's a job, she countered. It's structure. She's good with people, you know she is. She knows the business side from working in bars for years. She could run the front. I could handle the books. We bring in one partner who actually knows what they're doing, and we turn this around. It's not glamorous, but it's ours. I could see it so clearly. The version of the future she'd built in her head. Her name on a lease instead of a retail schedule. Brooke laughing behind a bar she actually owns. Some version of me dropping by on holidays, proud of the family business. Everyone pretending the past never happened. And where do I fit in? I asked, even though I already knew. She met my eyes. You know where. The words hung between us like a blade. We can't do it without capital, she said quietly. The bank laughed at us when we tried to get a loan. I don't have anything left to borrow against. Your sister's credit is completely wrecked. The only asset we have that anyone actually cares about is you. I'm not an asset, I said. I'm a person. You're both, she shot back without hesitation. You're my kid, and you're a walking success story that opens doors. You have grant money, stipends, connections to people with money. You have an acceptance letter with a name on it that makes people sit up straighter. You could take a leave just 1 year. Come home, help us get this off the ground, put some actual stability under all of us. Then you go back and finish. You'll still be the girl from Harvard. They're not going to forget about you because you took time off for your family. That's not how it works, I said, my voice steady even though my hands were shaking. My financial aid is built on me being full-time. My housing, everything is tied to me being enrolled. If I leave, I might not get back in. And even if I do, I'd be starting over from behind with gaps on my resume that I'd have to explain forever. You're 19, she said, like that was the answer to everything. You have time. Your sister doesn't. I work 40-50 hours a week and I still fall asleep doing math on the back of receipts. I can't hold this together by myself anymore. I need help. Real help. Not just phone calls once a week where you ask how I'm doing and then go back to your life. And I'm proud of you, she added, her voice breaking slightly. I am. But I need you. The words landed like little stones, each one heavy with years of accumulated weight. I could hear the fear under them. The exhaustion. The desperation of someone whose life had been slowly squeezing inward for so long she couldn't tell where the pressure was coming from anymore. It would have been easier if she'd come in villain mode. If she'd screamed and blamed and made it simple to hate her. Instead, she sat there in a cheap cafe chair looking like someone who'd been fighting for so long she'd forgotten what she was fighting for. You're asking me to gamble my one way out, I said softly. On the same person who's already proven she can't handle money. Who's already in debt she can't pay. I'm asking you to trust us, she said. To trust me. To believe that if we get one solid shot, we won't blow it. I didn't raise you alone just for you to turn your back when it gets inconvenient. I swallowed the lump in my throat. You didn't raise me alone, I said. I was there too. I worked. I studied. Kept my head down. I did my part. And now I'm asking you to do more, she said simply. Because you can. Because you're strong enough. Because your sister isn't. We sat in silence for a moment. And in that silence, I made a decision that would define the rest of our relationship. And the rest of my life. 2 years of silence. 2 years of building my life on my own terms. Brick by careful brick. 2 years of proving to myself that I could survive without them. My little health app had evolved into something real. Not venture capital backed Silicon Valley real. But real in the ways that actually mattered. It had become a collaboration with public health labs. pilot programs at community clinics that served the exact kind of people I'd grown up with. People who fell through the cracks, who couldn't afford private doctors, who showed up at emergency rooms when problems had already become crises. We'd published a small study showing that our tool helped flag at-risk patients sooner. Nothing revolutionary, just incremental improvement in the margins. But in healthcare, margins save lives. I'd graduated from Harvard with honors. Stayed in Boston because leaving felt like giving up the life I'd fought for. Shared a too-small apartment with a friend who also couldn't quite afford to leave yet. Worked long hours for a modest contract that let me keep building instead of selling out to some corporation that would turn my work into profit margins and quarterly reports. I'd built a life. Small one, maybe. Not the kind that makes headlines or gets you invited to TED Talks. But it was mine. Every piece of it earned, chosen, owned. Then, on a random Tuesday evening, my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. Los Angeles area code. I almost let it go to voicemail out of habit. The habit of protecting the peaceful life I'd built from the chaos I'd escaped. But something made me answer. Curiosity, maybe. Or that small, stupid part of me that never quite stopped hoping things might somehow be different. Ava. A voice I hadn't heard in so long I almost didn't recognize it. Brooke. Older. Rougher around the edges. But unmistakably her. I didn't say anything at first. Part of me was waiting for the punchline. For her to laugh and say she'd called the wrong number. That this was some kind of mistake or drunk dial. "You're really going to hang up on your own sister," she said when I stayed quiet a beat too long. That's cold. Even for Harvard. The old nickname hit me like a mild electric shock. Carrying all that resentment and distance and unresolved anger in 2 words. "What do you want, Brooke?" I asked, keeping my voice flat and emotionless. "I don't even have your number saved anymore. How did you get mine?" "Relax," she said. I asked around. "The internet isn't that hard if you know where to look. Plus, you're not exactly low profile these days." I almost laughed at that. Whatever she'd seen, some article about our pilot program maybe, or my LinkedIn profile, it certainly wasn't telling the full story. Wasn't showing my bank account or my student loan balance or the fact that I still bought generic cereal and walked instead of taking rideshares. "Seriously," I said, my patience already thin. "Why are you calling?" There was a rustling sound on her end, like she was pacing or shifting in a plastic chair. When she spoke again, all the sarcasm had drained out of her voice, leaving something raw and scared underneath. "It's Mom," she said simply. "She's sick." For a second, the room tilted sideways. The sounds around me, my roommate cooking in the kitchen, traffic outside, some TV show playing quietly, all faded into static. "What kind of sick?" I asked, my voice suddenly very small. The details came in fragments. The way bad news always does when the person delivering it doesn't really understand what they're saying. "Hospital test." A word I'd only ever seen in medical journals, suddenly attached to the person who used to sleep on the couch with the TV on because she was too tired to move to her own bed. "Cancer." Late-stage diagnosis. Symptoms she'd ignored for months because she couldn't afford to take time off work, couldn't afford the co-pays, couldn't afford to be sick. "Chemo." Complications. "Insurance that covers some things and shrugs at others," Brooke continued, her words coming faster now. "They caught it late. She ignored everything. You know how she is. Kept saying it was stress or age or that she just needed more coffee. By the time she finally went in, they were talking about stages and scans and treatment protocols and all that medical crap I don't understand." My brain automatically switched into clinical mode. The part of myself I'd built over years of working in healthcare, even tangentially. I started asking questions. Type. Stage. Treatment plan. Prognosis. Brooke's answers were imprecise but enough to build a mental picture. Serious but not necessarily hopeless. Treatable with the right intervention. Expensive in the way that American healthcare is expensive, where treatable and affordable exist in completely different universes. "Why are you calling me?" I asked quietly when she finished her explanation. "Because you work in this world now," Brooke said like it was obvious. "You've got your little health app thing or whatever it is. You know, doctors. You know systems. You probably know how to get us into some program or get a discount or some kind of special treatment. She needs surgery, then some kind of ongoing therapy after. The basic insurance covers the absolute bare minimum, the cheap version that has like a 50% success rate. The good stuff. She let out a bitter laugh. That's a whole different story. That's for people with real money. I'm not a doctor, I said automatically. I write code, build tools. I don't make medical decisions. You write code for doctors, she shot back. You know people. You've got connections. We've seen the articles. Local girl uses AI to change healthcare or whatever. All I'm hearing is that you have contacts who could help our mother not die. And you're sitting there making excuses. The way she said "our mother" made it sound like we were talking about two different people. Like her version of mom and my version had diverged so far they barely overlapped anymore. I didn't know you followed my work that closely, I said, unable to keep the edge out of my voice. We follow what we can, Brooke muttered. Small town news travels, even when you're trying to pretend it doesn't. Someone shared a link. Mom. She paused. Mom cried in the break room when she saw your face on her phone. Saw some article about your program. And then she pretended she just had something in her eye. The image made my throat tighten in a way I didn't want. I forced my voice to stay even. She could have called me herself, I said. She didn't need to send you. She didn't send me, Brooke protested. She didn't want to bother you. She kept saying, she has her own life now. She's busy. She doesn't need to deal with this. Then she'd go quiet and just stare at the wall for like an hour at a time. I got tired of watching that. So I found your number myself. There it was again. That messy, complicated mix of resentment and protectiveness that had always defined Brooke. Half accusation, half misguided loyalty. The sister who drove me crazy but who would also, apparently, hunt down my phone number when she thought I needed to know something. What do you actually want from me? I asked, trying to cut through the emotion to something concrete. Be specific. What are you asking for? There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing, could almost picture her trying to find the right words. The doctor mentioned some clinical trial or newer therapy option at a bigger hospital, she said finally. She said Mom might qualify, but there's a wait list, paperwork, politics, bureaucracy, whatever. We thought maybe you could, I don't know, talk to someone. Use your pretty email signature. Put in a word with somebody who matters. If there's some charity fund or grant program or anything with your name attached to it, maybe they'd listen more if the recommendation came from you. She went quiet for a second, then added softer. And if there's nothing you can do, if I'm asking for something impossible, at least tell me that straight. So I don't keep promising her miracles I can't deliver. That last part caught me completely off guard. It was the most honest, most vulnerable thing I'd heard from Brooke in years. Maybe ever. How bad is it financially? I asked, already knowing the answer wouldn't be good. Brooke laughed without any humor in it. We lost the bar a while ago, she admitted. Rent went up, customer numbers went down. Our so-called partner bailed with half the inventory. Mom's been doing whatever she can to survive. Extra shifts at a new retail job. Side gigs. Selling stuff. I'm piecing together income from 3 different part-time jobs. Nothing stable. We're behind on a lot of things. If we don't get some kind of help, Mom gets whatever the cheapest insurance option is, and we just have to hope it's enough. I rubbed my forehead, feeling the weight of this settling onto my shoulders whether I wanted it there or not. On my desk in front of me, a sticky note reminded me to call a clinic about renewing our pilot contract. On my screen, a half-finished slide deck for a modest conference presentation blinked. The title slide still open. Early detection in resource-constrained settings. The distance between my work and my family suddenly felt paper-thin. Non-existent even. Does she know you're calling me? Yes. Not yet, Brooke admitted. She's stubborn. You know that. She keeps saying, we'll figure it out, while looking at bills she literally cannot pay. But if you say yes, if you say you'll at least try, I'll tell her. And she hesitated. She won't say it, but she misses you. It's like there's always this empty chair pulled out for you in her head. A place you used to sit that nobody else can fill. I closed my eyes for a second, trying to process everything. It would have been easier if Brooke had come in hot. If she'd blamed me from the first sentence, demanded I fix everything, made this all manipulation and guilt, then I could have filed it under same old, and hung up with a clear conscience. Instead, what I heard was someone who was genuinely scared. Someone in over her head. Someone reaching for the only lever she thought might still move something. I can't promise anything, I said finally carefully. I'm not going to tell you I can magically get her into some perfect program with a phone call. That's not how any of this works. But I can look at what her doctors are saying. I can maybe ask a couple people I know to explain the options in plain English. Help you understand what you're actually dealing with. It's going to be about insurance, income, where she's getting treated. I can't override that with my name or my connections. So you'll, what? Read some stuff and get back to us? Brooke asked, suspicion creeping back into her voice. The old defensive Brooke returning. I'll meet you, I said, surprising both of us. I'm going to be in California next month for a conference in San Francisco. If you can get up there with her, we can sit down face to face and go over everything. I'm not doing this over the phone like some customer service representative. This is too important. San Francisco, she repeated slowly. You think Mom can just hop on a plane right now? In her condition? There are buses, I said. Trains. It's not that far. I'll cover the tickets if money's the problem. But if I'm going to put my name or my contacts on the line, if I'm going to call in favors from people I've worked with, I want to look both of you in the eye first. I want to hear exactly what's going on. The full story. There was a long pause. She's not going to like it, Brooke said finally. She hates asking for help. You know how proud she is. Yeah, I said, unable to keep the edge out of my voice. I know exactly where I got that from. Brooke let out a breath that might have been a laugh if it had a little more air behind it. Fine, she said. Text me the details. I'll figure out how to get her there. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my small office for a long time. On the wall in front of me was a corkboard covered with pinned-up graphs and patient feedback forms. Evidence of work that mattered, of problems I'd actually helped solve. On my desk was my laptop, open to an email draft addressed to a doctor I'd worked with on our pilot program, asking if he'd be willing to explain a complex treatment protocol in plain English for a family member of a friend. I could already feel the old currents tugging at me. The urge to fix everything. To smooth over all the rough edges. To sacrifice first and deal with the emotional fallout later. The pattern I'd spent 2 years trying to break. But I also felt something else. Something new and unfamiliar and uncomfortable. The memory of sitting in a coffee shop across from my mom while she slid a stack of debt papers toward me and asked me to trade my entire future for hers. The memory of choosing myself and being erased for it. This time, if I was going to walk back into their storm, I was going to do it with my eyes wide open. With boundaries. With limits. With the knowledge that helping someone doesn't mean drowning alongside them. I had no idea that the meeting I just agreed to would force me to confront the one question I'd been avoiding for 2 years. How much do you owe the people who gave you life when they spent years trying to take it back? The day my mom and Brooke came to San Francisco, the city was pretending to be kind. Soft fog rolling in from the bay. Not the sharp cold kind that cuts through your jacket and makes you regret every choice that brought you there. Almost gentle. My conference had finished early that morning. I was sitting in a quiet corner of the hotel lobby, conference badge still hanging around my neck, rereading the copies of my mom's test results that Brooke had finally sent after I'd nagged her for the 3rd time. Medical documents that reduced my mother to numbers and abbreviations and statistical probabilities. I'd already had 2 different doctors look at them. One from our pilot clinic back east who owed me a favor. Another I'd met through the conference, someone who specialized in oncology and was willing to give me 20 minutes of her time between panel discussions. Both had said basically the same thing. This was serious but not hopeless. Surgery followed by a specific combination therapy. Not the top-shelf experimental stuff Brooke had implied on the phone. That was either unavailable or unnecessary depending on which doctor you asked. But still expensive in the way that healthcare in America is expensive when you're poor, where every step forward costs more than you have and insurance covers just enough to keep you from dying immediately but not enough to actually get better. When they walked into the lobby, I recognized them instantly even though time had done its work on both of them. My mom moved more slowly than I remembered, her left hand resting lightly on the handle of a rolling suitcase, even though we were only meeting for the afternoon. Like she needed the support or maybe just needed something to hold on to. Brooke's hair was shorter, the dyed color grown out in a way that suggested she'd stopped keeping up appearances months ago. There were dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. For a moment, seeing them framed in the hotel doorway like that, I had this absurd thought that they were just here to visit. That we'd hug and complain about California traffic and argue over where to get dinner. Like we were a normal family doing normal family things. Then my mom saw me. Really saw me, not just recognized me but saw me, and something in her face folded inward. "You look different," she said when she reached me, her voice quiet. "Older, I guess." "You look the same," I lied. Because the truth, that she looked smaller, frilier, like someone had taken an eraser to the edges of her and worn her down, felt like too much for a first sentence. We found a quiet seating area off to the side of the lobby. All neutral tones and expensive plants. Carefully designed to look comfortable while subtly encouraging you not to stay too long. Picked it on purpose. Public enough that no one could completely lose it and make a scene. Private enough that we didn't have to whisper. My mom sat carefully, one hand going unconsciously to her side. Brooke dropped onto the couch beside her with a kind of heaviness that said she hadn't slept properly in weeks. For a second no one spoke. We just sat there in this expensive hotel lobby. 3 people connected by blood and history and hurt, not knowing how to start. Then Brooke clapped her hands once, breaking the silence like shattering glass. "Okay," she said with forced brightness. "You've seen the papers. You've talked to your fancy doctor friends. So what's the verdict? Is there a magic door we can walk through, or not?" "There's no magic door," I said, meeting her eyes. "There are options. Some good, some less good. But there's not a secret VIP entrance where I say a password and everything becomes free and easy. That's not how any of this works." My mom let out a soft, humorless laugh. "Would have been nice," she murmured. "I told her not to expect miracles," Brooke said, jutting her chin toward our mom. "But she kept saying Ava's smart. She'll know what to do. Like you're some kind of superhero instead of just a person." I unfolded the copy of the treatment summary I'd brought, annotated with notes from both doctors, highlighted in different colors to indicate what was important, what was optional, what was just medical bureaucracy. I slid it across the table. "Look," I said. "Here's the situation the way I understand it. The first hospital you went to recommended surgery and follow-up therapy at their facility. That's one path. It's covered partially by your insurance, but it leaves a big gap. Probably $15,000 to $20,000, that you'd have to pay out of pocket. Might as well be $1 million, my mom said quietly, not even looking at the numbers. There are also larger hospitals running clinical trials, I continued. You might qualify for 1 or 2 of them. Trials sometimes cover more of the costs because you're essentially providing them data in exchange for treatment. But you give up some control over which specific protocols you receive. And there are wait lists and travel requirements if you get in. It's a lot of logistics. But you know people there, Brooke cut in, leaning forward. That's the whole point, right? You can get her moved up on the lists. Get her noticed instead of lost in the bureaucracy. I can ask questions, I said carefully. I can email doctors I've worked with and say, "Hey, can you explain this in plain English? Is this program reputable? Are there charity funds she can apply for?" I've already done some of that. But I can't email them and say, "Do this for free because she's my mother." That's not how any of this works. They have their own lists, their own criteria, their own regulations. If they bend the rules, it's not going to be because some mid-level tech person from Boston sent them a sad email. My mom looked at the paper in front of her without really reading it. Her hands were shaking slightly. "So what are you saying exactly?" she asked, her voice strained. "That there's nothing you can do? That you came all this way to tell us we're on our own?" "I'm saying," I replied, choosing each word carefully, "that there are things I'm willing to do and things I'm not. I can help you understand the options. I can help you fill out forms. And trust me, there are a lot of forms. I can help you find charity programs and get on wait lists. I can contribute some money toward the gap. Not everything, but some. What I can't do is sign up to be the bank of last resort or the guarantee that no matter what choices you and Brooke make going forward, I'll keep writing checks to make everything okay." "Nobody asked you to write checks plural," Brooke muttered defensively. "We asked for help with this. With her. Once." I didn't say anything to that immediately. Not yet. Because there was a second folder in my bag. And I knew that once I opened it, the conversation was going to tilt in a direction we couldn't come back from. My mom noticed the folder edge sticking out of my bag and frowned. "What's that?" she asked. "More medical stuff." "No," I said quietly. "This is something else. But before we get there, I need to ask you something." I looked directly at my mom. "Do you understand why it was so hard for me to say yes the last time you asked me to give something up?" Her mouth tightened into a thin line. "We're really going to do this now," she said. "I thought we came here to talk about my treatment, not rehash old fights." "They're connected," I said. "You keep talking about family like it's this automatic thing. Like I'm broken or cold for wanting boundaries. But 8 years ago, 8 years, you asked me to put my entire education on the line for a business plan that wasn't even really a plan. And when I said no, you reacted like I'd betrayed you. Like I'd committed some unforgivable sin. I need to know if you understand how big that was for me. Because if you don't, then whatever we talk about today is going to sit on the same broken foundation we've always had." She rubbed her forehead in that familiar gesture, the one she used to do when bills piled up and she couldn't see a way through. "I was scared," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's not an excuse, but it's the truth. The bar, the debts, your sister spiraling into deeper and deeper trouble. I thought if I could just get through one more crisis, then I'd be able to breathe. And you were there. You had options. You had this golden ticket I didn't even know existed when I was your age. It felt," she struggled with the word, "it felt selfish, watching you hold on to it while everything else was collapsing around us. So you punished me," I said flatly. "I told you what I needed, and you took away everything you could control to make sure I knew how much that hurt you. I thought you'd come home," she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "Honestly, I thought you'd get scared or miss us or realize how hard it is to be completely alone, and you'd come back. I didn't think you'd just disappear into that place and build a whole life without us. Like we never mattered at all." "I didn't disappear," I said, my voice rising slightly. "You closed the door. You cut off my phone. You removed me from the group chat. You packed up my room. You made the choice that if I wouldn't do what you wanted, I couldn't be part of the family at all." There was a long, painful stretch of silence after that. Brooke shifted uncomfortably, looking like she wanted a cigarette or a drink or any excuse to leave. Finally she said, "Okay, great. Everyone admits they hurt everyone. Very therapeutic. Can we please get back to the part where Mom needs surgery that could literally save her life?" I looked at her, at the tiredness in her face that was different from my mom's. Less about illness and age, more about bad decisions catching up with you over time. "We will," I said. "But there's something I have to put on the table first." I pulled out the second folder and laid it down between us. My name was printed on the front in neat professional letters, placed there by someone in my company's compliance department. "A few months ago," I began, "I got an email from a bank I've never used. They wanted to clarify some details about a business loan application that was tied to my name. First I thought it was spam, some kind of phishing attempt. Then they sent documentation. Official paperwork." I opened the folder and turned one of the pages toward them. Application forms. The name of a small bar in LA I recognized from the background of Brooke's old Instagram posts. My name typed under co-owner. A digital signature that looked almost like mine if you didn't know what to look for. Someone applied for a line of credit using my credentials, I said, my voice eerily calm. They attached a fake letter on my company's letterhead saying we were backing a hospitality tech pilot there. It wasn't a huge amount of money, maybe $30,000, but it was enough to trip fraud alerts. Enough that my legal team had to get involved. Enough that I almost lost my job. The color drained from my mom's face like water from a broken glass. And in that moment, I watched my family's last chance at redemption shatter into pieces we'd never be able to put back together. "Please tell me this is a mistake," my mom whispered, staring at the documents like they might transform into something less damning if she looked long enough. "Please tell me they put your name on it as some kind of example or clerical error, or anything except what I think this is." "It wasn't a mistake," I said, looking directly at Brooke. "They traced the IP address, the contact email, the login credentials. Everything points back to the same apartment in LA. The same devices. The same recovery phone number." Brooke's jaw clenched. "You spying on me now?" she said weakly, but without her usual fire. "Reading my Wi-Fi history like some kind of cop?" "A bank was about to attach my name to a loan I knew nothing about," I said, keeping my voice level even though anger was building in my chest. "My company has investors who get very nervous when the word fraud shows up next to our CEO's name. I didn't go looking for you in their systems, Brooke. You dragged me into it when you typed my name on that form." My mom tore her eyes away from the paper and looked at Brooke, her voice shaking. "Tell me you didn't do this," she begged. "Tell me this is some mix-up. Please, Brooke. Please tell me you didn't risk her career, her reputation, after everything." Brooke didn't answer right away. For a second, I saw all the versions of her I'd grown up with flicker across her face like channels on a TV. The charmer who could talk her way out of anything. The victim who made everything someone else's fault. The comedian who deflected with jokes. None of them stuck. She just looked tired. Defeated. "I thought we could fix it before anyone noticed," she said finally, her voice small. "The bar needed cash immediately. The landlord was threatening eviction. Vendors were about to cut us off. Mom was working herself into the ground. And I could see her getting sicker even though she wouldn't admit it. Everything felt like it was one bad week away from total collapse. And there you were," she continued, gesturing at me. "Your name all over the internet. Attached to words like innovation and funding and impact. I thought if I used your name to get us a bridge loan, just enough to keep the doors open, you'd thank me later when we'd paid it back and Mom never had to know how close we came to losing everything. You were going to tell me after the fact?" I asked, genuinely incredulous. When some reporter called me asking about my new venture in nightlife, she winced. "I knew you'd be mad," she admitted. "I also knew if I asked first you'd say no. And I was completely out of people who hadn't already said no to me." My mom sagged back against the couch like someone had cut all the strings holding her upright. "You risked her job," she said to Brooke, her voice hollow. "Her reputation. Her whole career. After everything that happened, after all of it, you did this." "I risked a bank's money," Brooke shot back, then immediately looked like she regretted the words. "I mean, I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I was trying to keep us from drowning. That's all I ever tried to do." "You keep calling it drowning," I said quietly. "But you're the one jumping back into the water every time someone throws you a rope. You create the crisis, then you justify whatever you do next by pointing at the crisis you created." Nobody answered that. The hotel lobby sounds filled the space between us again. Wheeled suitcases rolling across marble. Low conversations. The soft hiss of the espresso machine behind the front desk. "So what happens now?" my mom asked finally, her eyes on the folder like it was a bomb that might still explode. "Are you pressing charges? Having her arrested?" I swallowed hard. This was the part I'd been turning over in my head for days, weeks even. Since the moment I'd first seen those documents. "The bank is deciding what to do," I said carefully. "They know I didn't authorize this. My legal team gave them everything we have to prove I wasn't involved. They're looking at whether this is part of a bigger pattern, whether there are other victims. I'm not going to lie to protect you if they ask me for a statement. I'm also not calling the police myself. I'm not interested in making your life worse just for sport. But I'm also not going to obstruct their investigation or pretend I don't know who did this. So you're just going to stand back and let them do whatever they want to my kid? My mom demanded, that old defensive fire flaring up. After everything, that's your answer? There it was. The flash of the old version of her. The one who could ignore a decade of context and history and zoom straight to "you're hurting us." I'm not standing back, I said firmly. I'm stepping out of a mess I didn't make. There's a difference. A big one. Brooke let out a shaky breath. You know they're going to look at everything now, she said, her voice cracking slightly. Not just this one thing. Every late payment. Every bad decision. Every mistake I've made for the past 5 years. They're going to put all of it under a microscope and use it against me. That's how accountability works, I said, softer than she probably deserved but unable to help it. You don't just get judged on the one moment you got caught. You get judged on the pattern. On what you've been doing all along. My mom pressed her fingers to her temples, her breathing shallow. This is exactly why I didn't want to tell you, she muttered. Every time we come to you for anything, it turns into a lecture. Trial. Like you're some judge and we're criminals who need to be sentenced. You didn't come to me, I reminded her, trying to keep my voice gentle. Your name came up when someone else started asking questions. You're here now because Brooke called. 'Cause you need something. Again. That landed like a physical blow. She flinched, her whole body curling inward slightly. Then she straightened as much as her energy and illness would allow. Fine, she said, her voice hardening. We're clear. You're not our safety net. You won't lie for us. You won't sacrifice for us. Message received loud and clear. But I'm still your mother. I'm sitting here with a diagnosis that terrifies me. Are you really going to look at me and say there's nothing you're willing to do? For a moment, all the versions of myself collided in my head like a car crash in slow motion. The teenager desperate for her approval, willing to do anything to be seen as good enough. The 20-year-old sleeping in the library because my entire support system had evaporated overnight. The woman sitting in conference rooms arguing about patient outcomes and statistical significance. The person who had learned, slowly, painfully, over years, that love without boundaries is just another way to get swallowed whole. I'll help you fill out charity and scholarship applications, I said, each word deliberate. I'll connect you with a patient advocate I trust, someone who knows how to fight insurance companies and hospital billing departments. I'll put some money toward the gap, whatever I can reasonably afford without wrecking my own financial stability. I'll get you a second opinion if you want one. I'll answer medical questions and help you understand what the doctors are saying. But, I continued, I will not empty my savings. I will not take out loans in my name. I will not sign my company's name next to any of this. I'm not going to build my future on the same hole you're standing in. Not again. Never again. My mom stared at me, searching my face for a crack, for some sign that I might break, that I was bluffing. You're really okay with that? She asked quietly. Knowing I might not get the best possible treatment because you drew a line in the sand? My throat tightened. No, I admitted. I'm not okay with any of this. I hate all of it. But I'm done pretending the only choices in front of me are save everyone, or be a monster. I can care about you and still not burn my life down for you. Those things aren't mutually exclusive, no matter how many times you've tried to tell me they are. Brooke shook her head slowly, disbelief written across her face. You sound like a self-help podcast, she said. Half sneer, half defense mechanism. Boundaries, choices, accountability. Must be nice to have all the right words for everything. It's not about having the right words, I said. It's about finally believing I have the right to use them. We talked logistics after that. The conversation that followed felt surreal. Sitting there discussing hospital social workers and grant application deadlines while the air between us crackled with everything unsaid, everything broken, everything that could never be fixed. I wrote down phone numbers, circled lines on forms, gave them the name and contact information for the patient advocate who'd already agreed, reluctantly, to take on this complicated family case at a reduced rate I'd personally cover. When it was over, my mom folded the papers carefully and put them back in her bag. She looked older than when she'd walked in. Not just tired anymore, worn down, diminished in some fundamental way. "You know," she said, standing slowly, "when you were little and you got sick, even just a cold, I used to sleep on the floor next to your bed. Your father thought I was crazy. He'd say, 'She's fine, she's breathing, come to sleep.' But I needed to be there, just in case." I didn't know what to do with that information. It didn't erase anything that had happened, but it landed somewhere deep anyway, in the place where childhood memories live. "I don't expect you to sleep on the floor next to my bed," she went on, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just thought that when it really counted, you'd show up the way I did. The way family is supposed to." "I am showing up," I said. "Just not in the way you're used to. Not in the way that requires me to set myself on fire." She nodded once. Not agreement exactly. More like acknowledgement that we'd reached an impasse neither of us knew how to cross. Brooke hugged me goodbye without warning. It was quick and stiff, more muscle memory than genuine affection. But it was something. "They're going to make an example of me if this bank thing goes to court," she said against my shoulder. "You know that, right? They're going to want to show that fraud has consequences. They're going to follow the evidence," I replied. "That's all I know. And all I can tell you." "And you won't get in the way?" she asked. Not quite a question. "You won't try to fix it?" I pulled back enough to look her in the eye. "I won't add weight to the scale," I said. "But I'm done putting my thumb on it in your favor when you keep jumping onto the wrong side yourself." She huffed out a laugh that sounded almost like acceptance, almost like respect. "Guess I finally ran out of extra lives," she said. "Took longer than it should have." When they left, I watched them go through the lobby doors and disappear into the San Francisco afternoon crowds. I had this sudden, irrational urge to run after them, to call them back and say, "Forget everything. I'll cover it all. I'll make it easy. Just like you always wanted." Instead, I sat back down, opened my laptop, and sent 2 carefully worded emails. One to the patient advocate, confirming I would pay her reduced fee for taking my mother's case. One to my lawyer, confirming in writing that I would not authorize any settlements or statements that implied I shared responsibility for the loan application. That I would cooperate fully with any investigation. It wasn't cinematic. There was no dramatic music, no security escort, no slam doors. Just a handful of choices made carefully, deliberately, with full awareness of what they would and wouldn't fix. For the first time in my life, I wasn't acting out of panic or obligation or instinct. I was choosing, on purpose, consciously deciding where my responsibility ended. It didn't feel victorious, felt a little like grief. But underneath that, somewhere quieter and steadier, it also felt like the beginning of something else. Something that might eventually feel like peace. The investigation didn't turn into headlines. Brooke took a deal. Probation, restitution, no prison if she stayed clean. She texted me once. Probation, restitution, no prison if I don't screw up. I typed "I'm glad" 3 times. Deleted it every time. Finally wrote, "I hope you take it seriously." She never responded. My mom's treatment moved forward. Slowly. Frustratingly. But forward. The patient advocate fought with insurance companies and hospitals, pieced together funding from charity programs and grants. I covered a gap that would have destroyed my savings if I hadn't prepared for it. It didn't feel heroic. Felt like paying a bill in installments. My mom texted once. "They say it's going okay so far. Thank you for the advocate." I wrote back. "I'm glad. I hope you're resting." She replied with a thumbs up emoji. I tried not to read too much into the fact that it was the same response she used to send when I texted her test scores in high school. Life split into 2 tracks after that. On one, Work, conferences, published studies, my app expanding to more clinics. On the other, quiet updates about treatment, complications I'd hear about through the advocate, weeks of silence. I never visited the hospital, never sat by her bed. But I didn't abandon her either. I found a middle ground that let me sleep at night. People ask me now if I've forgiven my family. The word makes me uncomfortable. Sounds too much like wiping the slate clean. I say this instead. I understand them better now. Understanding doesn't mean I want them back in my life the way they were. It just means I don't have to carry them like a live wire anymore. My mom once told me that choosing Harvard over family was something I'd regret forever. Like it was a curse she was handing me. Do I regret it? Well, I regret that those were the choices in front of me. I regret that love and obligation were so tangled that any move toward myself felt like betrayal. But I don't regret saying, I won't trade my future for someone else's second chance. If there's any lesson here, it's this. Choosing yourself isn't the same as abandoning the people you love. Sometimes it's the only way to stop everyone from falling into the same hole again and again. You are not evil for wanting a life that isn't built on constant emergency. You are not selfish for drawing a line where your responsibility ends. And if someone tells you you'll regret not setting yourself on fire to keep them warm, that's their guilt talking, not your truth. So here's my question for you. Was I wrong to refuse? Should family loyalty mean sacrificing everything, even your future? Or is there a point where self-preservation isn't selfishness? It's survival. Drop your answer in the comments. Tell me if you've been in a situation like this. Tell me if you think I should have done more, or if I did too much already. And if this story resonated with you, if you've ever been the good kid, expected to fix everyone else's mess, hit that subscribe button. Because you're not alone in this. Thanks for watching. And remember, you're allowed to build a life that's yours, even if that makes you the villain in someone else's story.